what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the SeqTek podcast. We took a little break, but don't worry. We are back, and it is so good to be back with you guys. As always, I'm here with Kenn Williamson. Kenn, how you been, man?
I've been doing good, trying to beat the heat, man. Where we're at, it is full gear summer, 100-degree days, and supposed to continue at least for a little while. I've been hiding out in my office trying to soak up that AC. What about you?
Yeah, no, exactly the same thing. I literally moved my office to the back of our house where there's a little bit more shade because, you know, we're in like a little bit of an older house. And so like the living room can't stay very cool. And so just to stay cool, man, I'm like moving furniture. I'm basically working out of the hallway.
Nice.
Just to stay cool right now.
I thought about that because my office is upstairs. And I mean, it's the same sort of thing, you know, 90 degrees is fine. But when we get to 100, like it's maybe like 80 up in the office. But I'm not really someone that, you know, is really strongly affected by temperature. You know, if it's anywhere from like 60 to 80, I'm fine. I wear a t-shirt. If it's hot, I'll put on a hoodie. If it's colder. Yeah. It's not really something that affects me. But up at church, we've been having a lot of people that have been just like, you know, not dealing with it that great. So we have like the AC going full blast. And because it's such a big room, you'll have the people in the front rows bundled up in blankets. And then the people in the back rows are like in their t-shirts because it's just so hot.
Listen, I got a theory on this. All right. And, you know, I'm only going to sidetrack us for a minute, but here's my theory on this. Okay. There is just a whole different world when it comes to temperature between skinny people and us fat people. Okay.
I think that you're onto something.
It really is. You know, I went and played golf with some of our coworkers, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's like 109 out there.
Oh, yeah.
They're all you know, they're thin guys.
Yeah.
They're out there, man. They're just having the time of their lives. Ken, I was dying. Like dying out there. You know what I mean? Because listen, man, give me 30 degrees before you give me 115. You know what I mean? I like it cold. You know, just us big people, man. That's just, you know, a lot of insulation there, you know? So, so you know, it's a little bit more, you know, for us for sure, you know, just dealing with this weather. But yeah, I'm about, you know, so you said 60 to 80. I'm like 60 to like, or you said 60 to 90, right?
60 to 80.
60
I'm
to
feeling
80.
Pretty comfortable.
I can go like 50 to like 75. You know what I mean? And so it's just a whole different world, man.
I think you're right. I think you're onto something there. And so
just gotta get skinny, man. That's just, you know.
Yeah. I'll tell you it's you know, it's trade-offs. You know, like in software development, there are trade-offs with everything because you know, like finding clothes that fit is a big problem when you're as skinny as me. And just like yeah, it's I don't know. I've never been really big, so I can't really talk about it.
Yeah, you know, it's I mean, I was like, you know, I was never like bone thin. Yeah. You know, which was my indicator early on in life, you know, that, you know, early in life I should have kept with the diet and stuff. You know, what happens though to you is like, you feel like, you know, like you're in your 20s. We can edit all this out too if we want, whatever. You know, we're just going off about everything but software right now. But listen, when you're in your 20s, it's like I can gain 10 pounds and like literally I could just eat well for like 3 days and hit the gym and I can lose it all. You hit 30, dude, that goes away. Yeah. You know how hard it is to lose a pound now, you know, at 34? Like it just becomes a whole nother world.
I wish I could sympathize, but I have the exact opposite problem, which is that I will, like, I've been doing workouts every day. You know, I've been taking protein supplements. And if I go off of my program for even like a couple of days, then I'll lose 5 pounds, like just like stopping for a couple of days. So I guess the moral of the story is that there is no good weight to be happy with.
100%, because yeah, you're right. It is opposite. Like for me, you know, I went up like 15 pounds of my squat max in the last like 6 weeks just doing a couple of squat workouts. And like some of the guys I work out with, you know, they have those fast metabolisms like you, dude. I mean, it is so hard for them to gain muscle. You know what I mean? So like their maxes, you know, they'll go up like maybe 5 pounds in a max, you know, whereas I can jump 15 or 20.
Yeah,
you know?
and I've definitely gotten stronger doing it. Like, but it's a lot more like more reps than it is more weight. Like my muscles have gotten the ability to oxygenate quite a bit better. And so, you know, when I first started, I was struggling to do like 10 push-ups, and now, you know, I can probably do like 50 if I'm really trying for it, you know, without stopping. And so there's definitely been a big increase. But yeah, no, I think you're exactly right about that. Like as far as, you know, increasing mass and increasing like total weight that I could do like in a bench or something, it's just really hard to get any gains.
No, 100%. Okay, well, we will talk about software today, I promise.
We'll get there.
Yeah. Listen, people are gonna listen to this though, and they're gonna be like, if you're like me, you lean a little bigger, you're gonna be like right there with me, and if you're with Ken, you're gonna be. You know, you're gonna be listening to this like I can relate to these
most
guys.
Most of the people watching are gonna probably land within one of these camps. So I think this is great content.
100%. Well, hey man, I'm excited to do another Dev Corner today. No guest, as we're just kind of ramping back up, coming out of just a little summer break. We gotta go on some vacations too here, guys. Yeah. We gotta get a little time off.
Well,
but
we had giant thunderstorm that just like completely wrecked everything. The studio where we do it was down. They didn't have power. I didn't have power at my house.
I didn't have power for a good week. Yeah. We're not talking about like we lost power for 8 hours. I mean, a massive storm came, millions of dollars of damage to the city. I mean, it was bad, and we all lost power for a week. Some people 2.
Yeah, and there's still broken trees on the side of the road that still need. I mean, they're just everything's still getting caught up even a month later. So, there's a little bit of good reason why we took a break. Right. So I'm happy to get back with you though, and I'm excited for what we're going to talk about today. It's going to be, I think, really interesting.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to do a little Dev Corner and just talk about today what I really wanted to focus on, and this will be a little bit more of interview style. So just to give you guys some background, I've been a software developer almost 2 years, 20-ish months, coming out of a boot camp. Ken, you've been in this about 3 years, 4 years?
So I started in development about 15 years ago, and then I really started doing like web development and consulting like 5, 6, almost coming up on 6 years.
6 years. So what I wanted to do was, it's going to be a little bit more of an interview style, coming from, a guy who, is still kind of early on in development. Talking to Ken over the last, about 6 months has come on our team, taken on the role of a tech lead now, senior developer, tech lead, now kind of going from overseeing projects as a whole, in the development teams, right? And so, one of the things as a developer, you get into this, if you're a junior developer, if you're a mid developer, it doesn't matter where you are. Maybe you're a senior developer, but you're not quite yet leading teams. The thing we all want to do is advance in our careers, right? And, when it comes to software engineering, one of the things that we all know as engineers, business leaders, you should know this too, is that we all deal a lot with imposter syndrome, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter. I've learned this just in 20 months. Like, it doesn't matter how long I do this. I never feel ready for the next project. I never feel ready for the next feature. I never feel like I actually know enough about what's going on. I mean, it's just a constant, fight to, continue to educate yourself and to learn and to grow and to push yourself. Software engineering is just not a world where you're very comfortable for very long,
Yeah, we kind of touched on this in other episodes, but it's just everything moves so fast, and now the space is just so huge, and there's so many different technologies. It is really hard to to feel confident, but really I'm okay with it. Like, I've kind of come to terms with that, and really, if you can take that feeling of imposter syndrome and and turn it into a humility about your skill. You know, you can know that you're good at your job, but just having some humility about saying, you know what, I don't necessarily know exactly what to do, but I feel confident in my ability to learn, and I feel confident in my ability to find out answers to things. I think that is something that you can do positive with these feelings, like you say, that everybody has, and I think rightly so. You know, it's just the way that software is right now. You know, I'm working on this project, working with a data guy who's been introducing me to all sorts of new cool data tools and a lot of Python stuff that I hadn't been exposed to. You know, and it's really easy for software people, and I mean, and this is just people in general, everywhere you go, you know, you kind of want to make it seem like you know more than you do, because people have this idea, especially, you know, I'm going to single out guys. Guys are really bad about this, but that saying I don't know, or that I'm going to have to look that up, that feels like an admission of weakness. Yeah. But, you know, when we're talking about being climbing up the software development ladder, you have to get over that. You have to realize that, you know, admitting that you don't know something is opening up the space for other people to help you, to give you input on what you're looking at, as well as setting expectations properly as far as, okay, how are we going to move forward? You know, when you understand that there's stuff that you have to learn first, you know, I think that makes it easier for people to set expectations. 100%.
Yeah, I love how you said that, and I love what you're talking about there about, you know, just having to have that humility. One thing that I learned in software, you know, in this job, is that the answer I don't know is just, it's perfectly fine. You know, it's an acceptable answer, and that's just not quite something that applies to all walks of life. So it can be a little uncomfortable. Like, there's some things that you just, like, you have to know, right? And as guys, you're right. You know, we feel like we have to know it, right? But in software, there's just a lot of things that you just don't know. I mean, I've been on a project lately, building, I'm building in ASP.NET web forms from, it's basically framework 4.5. So it's basically like a 2012-ish project, along with Visual Basic. Oh, wow. There's not, I don't know anything about Visual Basic, and, you know, surprise, surprise, because it's been out of development, not a lot of resources on it either, right?
No.
And so when, you know, I'm looking for things, it's like the fastest way for me to get to where I need to go is just by saying, I don't know. I got to go find someone or something that can explain it to me. And typically for me, what I've learned is the best process is to go look it up, research it, you know, well, first, truly understand your problem. This is something I struggled with a lot early on. I felt like as a developer, is that, like, I thought the problem was one thing, and I would stop looking at the problem and just start researching that thing, only to find out that actually I had it wrong. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't the type of object I was sending in. It was where I was sending it, right? Sure. It's not the data. It's not that the data is not coming back. It's that, you know, the view model isn't set up correctly, right? And so, you know, and if you're not technical, basically all I'm saying here is that I think that the problem is in the attic, but it's actually in the basement. And I start going to find everything I can to fix the attic, and you waste a day because you fix up the attic, great, but your problem's still in the basement, you know? And that was something I had to really learn, is know where the problem is, understand the problem, go try to figure it out, research it. And if you can't understand, now when you go and ask somebody, you can ask a really clear question, and you can say, okay, here's what I know about the problem, but it's still not enough. Help me understand where the gap is. You know what I mean? And so that's something that I'm really learning. And I'm curious to hear from you, though, for somebody who is really looking to grow and move up. You know, there's a lot of developers out there. Maybe, you know, they have some experience, they're going, man, I really want to know if I can go after a FANG type of job, which is, one of the bigger software companies. I want to know if I can get into a mid-level role, or I'm a mid-level. I want to know if I can go into a senior level role. What would you say are the things you really need to be preparing for if you're trying to level up in your career as a software engineer, much like you've kind of taken that journey, pretty successfully for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really good question, and I think that you kind of alluded to it and have a really good idea. So to make the jump from a junior developer to a mid-level developer is exactly what you were alluding to when you were talking about the issues that you were having, which is that understanding how to frame the problem is what's going to differentiate a junior developer and a mid-level developer, because a junior developer is not going to have enough experience to be able to understand, I need to be looking in the basement, to use your analogy, and they're going to have to go to somebody in order to even get direction to know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
And so that, and so really that is what, as a junior developer, the skill that you want to be working on is trying to, and this is a hard skill to learn, but trying to figure out what your process is for framing the problem, for framing the question, because that is going to be so key in being able, as you mentioned, to look up the right information about what you're trying to solve. So when you're trying to make that jump from a from a more junior role into a mid-level role, that's really what you need to be focusing on, is getting the experience and paying attention when people are giving you advice about how to approach a problem. Ask good questions of them. Well, what makes you think that I should be looking in this direction? Tell me a little bit about your process that helps you zero in on, this is what I should be trying to figure out. And that will really give you the tools you need to make that jump to a more mid-level guy, where the expectation is that given a problem, you know how to frame the problem, and that you know how to go and look it up, even if maybe you don't aren't able to see the overall picture of what, how this fits into everything else that you're doing, that the team is doing. And that's what I would say is kind of the jump between a mid-level and a senior level person, is being able to look at a problem. A senior level person should be able to look at a business level problem and break it down into technical steps that should then be able to be handed off to mid-level and junior level developers to work on these individual steps. And so that is kind of the big key about being able to move from this mid-level to this more senior level, is how do I take business level requirements and break them down into not necessarily self-contained, but just like easily digestible chunks of work that can be handed off to some, or you work it yourself. And a lot of times, as a senior guy, you might be a one-stop shop, but that process of being able to break stuff down in an understandable, digestible way, that's what's really going to differentiate you from a mid-level guy who is once it's broken down, knows how to frame the question and knows how to go and solve that problem, right? And that's also going to differentiate from the junior guy who's probably going to need some direction even in framing the question. And then when you're a senior developer and you really want to transition to leading a team, it's really more about understanding a little bit of soft skills and being able to give people feedback and have them, respond well to the feedback that you're giving them. This is something that was hard for me in the transition to this, is that, when we're talking about technical things, breaking down problems, all of this, I'm really good, but, I'm really a pretty blunt and matter of fact kind of person. And, I think that that's helpful, and you want you want a team environment where people understand that we're not, we're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but we're also not trying to like coddle anyone at the same time. You know what I mean? And so it's, that to me is kind of the pivot.
And can I just say one thing right there?
Yeah, of course.
That's where, when we were talking about JD, about software being more of a blue collar job, so much of that is just the fact that if you want to be a software engineer, you better get used to you better learn how to give self feedback to yourself, but you also better learn how to interpret and receive feedback. Now, listen, there's never a reason why anyone should ever feel disrespected. But I would expect any higher, senior level engineer to give some pretty blunt feedback at times, because we have a job to do. This isn't, just we're going to sit around and kumbaya and let's go down to the cafe and talk about the problem. It's like, no, we got to get this done because you got to deliver, So sorry.
No. I think that's a really good point. And no, I mean, you bring in the idea of the blue collar aspect, and that I think feeds into what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because a lawyer, a doctor, all of these kinds of quote unquote professionals, a large portion of their job is getting people on board with what they're saying, as opposed to when you're a developer, if you're doing it right, the biggest part of your job should be delivering successful code, right? It's not necessarily, being the best communicator, but there is a pivot, and that's kind of what I was leading into, is that when you want to move from being just a senior level developer, which, I'll tell you, there's nothing wrong with getting to that spot, and being happy and just saying, you know what? I don't want to be in a position to be leading people. I don't want to be in a position where I'm responsible holistically for a project. I want to just solve problems. I want to help, mentor younger developers to some extent with helping them to break down problems and help them to figure out their own process as far as that goes. But, it's not really that interesting to me to move up and say, well, I want to have conversations with other developers about, about their code quality or their productivity or any of these kinds of things, that as a technical lead, as someone that's kind of stepping into a more leadership role, that's the difference.
Yeah.
That's the difference between these two roles, is that you have to be, it's not just knowing, it's also being able to communicate.
Right.
And so that's what I would say that the big jump is from there. And then once you're there, you kind of have an open avenue towards, if you want to go into more management, you can do that. But you're kind of near the end of what I would say the developer path is, because when you start getting much above that, then you're really not doing as much technical work, and you are like the technical lead is someone that you have the expectation that at any place in the project there's a gap, that person can step in and fill that gap.
Yeah.
I can write code, or at the very least, I know what the code should be written, even if, maybe it's a technology that you're not super familiar with. But really, the expectation is that you can be writing code at any level, and that you can fill in those gaps that may occur. And then once you start getting beyond that, well, then you're kind of relying on that technical leadership to fill that role, and then you're more of a business vision and people management role, as opposed to a technical management role.
Yeah, so there's so much in everything you just said, but that's such a great breakdown. And here is what it comes down to for me at every level, right? So at first, Ken started talking about that junior developer talking to the senior developer, and the senior developer talking to that junior developer of, okay, that junior developer is not going to quite know exactly what's going on. And so for a senior developer coming in and helping that person, it's kind of identifying, okay, where are they stuck? Not necessarily in the project, but where mentally are they stuck? What part of this are they having a tough time, or do they just not maybe know enough about, or so like a good example of that to me is early on when I came on the team, you know, I came on in a very unique situation because I came on, I had no experience, and I got put into a project where I was a junior developer. You know, it was interesting, you know, just kind of, or being a solo developer, you know, just being the only guy on the project and not having experience. It was like, it was great because there's so much learning opportunity. It was also hard at times. I remember you and I having a conversation once, you know, we were looking at some React code, and you just kind of like I didn't realize this, but you realized like he doesn't quite understand indexing when it comes to a table, like where you know, and how to use the index, right? And I was just stuck on a couple of problems that result in the same pattern of like, okay, there's a knowledge gap when it comes to the index, right? And then, you know, you were kind of able to really help me understand what, you know, indexing and sorting and how to use an index to grab a specific row, a specific object, whatever we're doing, right? And when I think back on those, you know, those conversations, really what that took is me as a junior developer, which, you know, I don't know if I was doing well at the time, but it was me knowing that I had a gap, saying, hey, Ken, I need help. And then getting on a call and saying, okay, here's what I do know. You know, can you help me fill in those gaps? And you coming in and saying, okay, well, you know, that's kind of right. That's not quite right. You know, let me help you out here a little bit. And I think that what's so important about that entire sequence is that it took me as a junior developer being able to communicate and using empathy and humility to say, I don't know, can you help me? And it took a senior level developer to have empathy, to understand communication, and to be able to say, yes, let me come in and let me help you, you know, the best way that I can, right? And that's just, you know, that's so important still in everything that we do is the communication. And then you were talking about from that senior level, right? Well, as a senior level developer, if you want to be a successful senior level developer, you know, you have to learn how to communicate down. If you want to be a successful junior mid-level developer, you need to learn how to communicate up. And if you're going to be a tech lead, you better know how to communicate in a 360 manner. Yeah. Everything comes down to communication. And listen, you and I, you know, we both encountered these type of people. There are some people out there that, I mean, they get it. You know, technically, they really understand it, and they're really, really good developers. But they have no interest in learning how to employ skills of communication and empathy and teamwork. And at the end of the day, you know, if you want to go in and your whole life, like, all I want to do is code. I just want to code. I want to sit there. I want to just code things out. I don't care about anybody else. Don't have patience for other people. That's great. I mean, there's going to be a role for you. You could probably do pretty well financially. But I don't know if you're going to do anything outside of just code, right? If you ever want to really have an impact in a team environment, it comes down to communication. It comes down to empathy. If you can employ those skills, soft skills, like you were talking about, across the board, I think you could be still pretty successful as a developer. But you have to, like everything we're talking about here, we're talking about how to grow as a developer. We're talking about everything but developing. We're talking about all the soft skills, right? And then you have to combine that with some hard work. You know, you got to go figure it out. You got to go learn the problem. You know, one of the things I felt like I also struggled with a lot early on was that we'd get on. I'd get on call. I'd you know, hey, I'm stuck. I'd figure something out, but I was only thinking about what we were solving in the moment, not the problem as a whole. So then that senior level developer, they would jump off the call. I'd go on to the next part of solving the problem, realize I don't understand that part of the problem either. You know what I mean? So now I'm just stuck again because I'm like, well, okay, I understand what we did here. And that was because, you know, I'm so laser focused just on, can you help me get this one piece of data here? I'm not focused on the entire problem, which is, why does that data? Well, the data needs to be there because the user story is, if the data is there, then the user should be able to X, Y, and Z. Well, you didn't really think about X, Y, and Z. in the whole landscape of the problem. You just you focused on one thing, and you kind of wasted probably a valuable moment with a senior level developer where you're getting some help. You have them on the phone, you have them on a call, but you didn't really use that resource correctly because you focused on this very one linear thing instead of just looking at the problem as a whole and being able to go, hey, and this is something I really had to learn how to do as a junior. Hey, I'm not, this is the problem. If we can get to how to solve that, that's great. But can we actually just go through the user story, and can you and I just walk through and comment out the blocks of code needed to solve this user story, right? Like, here is where I'm at in the user story. Here's, some comments about what I think needs to happen here. Then this needs to happen here. And then this needs to happen here. Am I on the right track of how to solve this problem? And then when we get off the call, I have a deeper understanding of the actual problem, how to frame that problem, what I'm going to do with that. And if we can get in some syntax stuff, like, I don't really know why I'm not able to get this object here or whatever, then great. We can get in some syntax, but I'm going to do a lot better just having that whole things blocked out with somebody who really understands it, who can give me some architecture to follow, right?
Yeah. No, I think that you made a lot of really good points there. And I think that the big key is exactly what you were saying, which is that, the thing that the junior developer has to learn is how to frame the problem. And you get sucked into this detail about, I can't get this one thing that I'm trying to do to work, but you're not even asking the question of necessarily like, how does this fit in to the overall solution to a problem? And so I think you're exactly right about what, as a junior developer, what you need to do is, obviously if you're blocked, if you're frustrated, you need to go to a senior developer and ask questions. But I think exactly what you're saying is that don't limit the scope of the conversation to how do I technically solve this one problem that I'm having that's, like a more language feature problem, where I'm not necessarily completely understanding how this data structure works or how the features of the language work. That's important. And that's something that a senior level guy should be able to help you with, or at least point you in the right direction. But just overall, am I approaching that, like, I got blocked for some reason. Mm-hmm. Is the reason that I got blocked just this technical thing that I'm dealing with right now? Or is the reason that I'm blocked just the overall approach that I'm taking to solve the problem? Am I framing the problem correctly?
Right.
Exactly what you were saying. Let's go back to the user story. Let's go back to the requirements. Let's think through that level of things. And then that will drill down into these technical questions.
Right.
But you're exactly right. You're losing an opportunity if you are just trying to get answers to these narrow technical problems that you're having. And I just think that you're exactly right, that is a wasted opportunity for you. And it really goes back to what we were talking about earlier with humility, which is that, that I want to just get the answer to this narrow technical problem. That's an arrogance. That's saying, well, I already understand the overall problem I'm trying to solve, and I'm just getting caught up on this one little piece of it. Mm-hmm. And once this is unblocked, then I'll be able to solve everything, right? But if you have the humility to just say, hey, I'm getting blocked here, something's going wrong, I really need to take a step back and meet with somebody and look at overall what I'm doing to validate that the approach that I'm taking makes sense, as well as can I solve whatever this technical issue is that I'm having with the technology. So I'm in complete agreement. I think that is a great way to look at it.
Yeah, well, here's what I would love to do, kind of wrapping up. We've talked a lot about process and problem solving. So as somebody who, still kind of in the junior, stage of my development career, I'll just give you a little bit about what I've learned from my process of problem solving when I'm stuck, or, if I've got a big feature, and I'd love to hear yours. But so for me, I'm a visual person. Like you know, I can read documentation and kind of understand it, but where I really understand something is like if I can just watch like a quick video of somebody doing it, like I just get it a little bit more, you know? And so for me, when I'm going into a large feature, a large problem, something that I don't feel ready for, what I've learned to do is the first step I do is exactly what I said. I start commenting what I'm going to do. So I go find where I need to work, whatever, whatever form, if it's front end or back end or whatever, I figure that out, and I figured out exactly where my first piece of code is going to go. And then I write down, okay, right here, I'm going to create, this is going to be the variable to get, to set up, the object. And then a couple of lines down, this is where I'm going to add my, my formic values, if it's a form, right? And then down here is where I'm going to, and I just try to comment it all out and try to understand, okay, this is what needs to get passed. This is kind of how I understand it. And then underneath my comments is where I'll start coding. And then as I'm going through and I'm coding, if I get all the way through the comments and I still don't feel comfortable, that's the first place I'll ask for help. Because one thing I've learned in development is it's far better to start asking questions before you go down the road than before you get halfway through, because you're biased. And let's be honest, all of us have a little bit of laziness in us. And I promise you, you put in a day's work on some code, you're going to try to force that code to work because you don't want to go back and rewrite it. And then you're going to end up writing bad code. And I've learned that, just through experience. And so it's like, okay, let me go ask somebody, okay, is this a good approach to this problem? Yes, no, I would actually probably do it this way, that way. But, or if I just get the answer, like, that's not how I would do it, but if, it'll work. Well, it made sense to me. That's why I wrote it out that way. So I'm going to stay with that, right? Because unless what I'm hearing works, it kind of clears it up. But it's like, okay, I think I have a path to the problem. And then, I'm going to start coding. And then, now I have the whole architecture. I really understand the user story. I understand the problem. And then now I can just go in and I can start coding. And now if I understand what I'm doing and where, if it's just a matter of I'm just getting stuck on syntax or whatever, now I at least know I can just go look up some React videos. I can go look up some C# video. You know what I mean? I can go look these things up a lot easier, And so that's something that I've learned to do. That's my process of problem solving, is I just start writing it out as comments, and I write it out until I understand it. And then I attack how to actually code it all out. And what I found is coding it all out and finding the answers to that is far easier when you actually have a good path. What do you think? And what's kind of your process?
No, yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I do as well. Just here recently is that what I want is I want to understand the process at a business level. And what I mean by that is not talking about data structures and syntax, but I want to understand what we're starting with, what we want to end up with, and then start going through the workflow that a user is going to be doing. Or, if we're just talking about back-end work, just the steps of the business process that I'm trying to work on. And, I do the same thing. Is I'll start with comments and just say, step 1, do this, 2, 3, all the way down the line. And, and then, you want to meet with somebody and just validate that your understanding of this thing that you've written out, that is the correct understanding, and if you're in a good place, that has a nice process, then usually you can, do all that and then see, okay, does this match up with my user story? You know, and you may not need to necessarily meet with somebody, but you just validate that, that's doing the right thing. And then, and then you start coding, and then what I would say is maybe what's a little bit different is that sometimes you, from the senior developer, technical lead person perspective, you need to do that for other people. And what you have to do in that scenario, and this is something that I'm working on for myself, which is, is that you have to make things digestible. You know, like I have a really bad habit of just like getting on a call with a junior guy and just like data dumping 1,000 details about how something needs to work. And what, you know, which is helpful in a way because it kind of gives them an overall picture, but it's also kind of not helpful in a way because it's not directing them down the right path. So what you have to do when you get to this level is that you have to start breaking things down into levels, into a hierarchy of detail where, okay, I'm going to meet with you and I'm going to give you this high level detail of the overall thing. And then I'm going to give you some medium detail about this first step that you're going to work on. And then I'm going to say, okay, go work on that. Let me know if you're getting blocked. And then once you're done with that first step, let's meet again and we'll talk about how do we go start the second step. Because what I've done before in the past has just been like, okay, here's 1,000 details about every single piece of what you're doing. And people just can't retain that. People can't absorb that when it's coming at you like that in general. And so that's what I would say when you get to the senior level, that's what you really have to work on is let me encapsulate everything at a high level and then let me break down things at a medium level for one piece and then just being in communication. You know, it's really easy in the development world. You know, a lot of us are pretty introverted. A lot of us want to just, you know, do our work and not talk to anybody. But when you get to this senior developer, technical lead type level, you need to have the expectation that you're going to be meeting with the people on your team every day and just kind of checking in, you know, and it should be something like, I've given you the high level detail. Here's what you're working on. Are you blocked on this? No, you're going to continue with that. Okay, then let's go ahead and just start slowly roughing out the next piece, right? And then when you're done with this one, we'll finish this, you know, and just kind of in a line, just kind of get all that detail in a digestible way.
Yeah, that's so huge. You know, being in that seat recently of kind of being more junior, like what you're saying is so good because that can be so hard as a junior developer when you're on a call a senior level developer and they give you like 7 terms that you just never heard and just give you like all these things. And you're just like, okay, well, cool. I'll spend the next 2 days just figuring out what you just said because I didn't understand a word, you know?
Exactly.
And it's like, so in a way it's like what you said probably was the answer, but I couldn't retain 10% of it, you know? And so it was like, so that's where I learned like just, you know, and here's what I would say. This is a life hack, I think, for a lot of junior developers. We talked about communication. Your relationship values will take you far. I think one of the things that I feel like has really helped me as a junior developer is I've really, really made sure that I build a good relationship with our senior developers on our team because I need them. You know, I need their help and I want their help, you know? And so I've tried to build a good personal relationship, and having equity with people, it just matters. It just matters. Yeah. And where it matters is like when we're on a call and like Ken gives me like 7 things I didn't understand. What I've learned to do is like, okay, hold on, let's stop. Okay. So you're saying first right here, you would do X. And then literally with Ken on a call, even though it's taking some more of his time, I'm like, okay, I'm writing that as a comment. And then, okay, are you saying you would go here? And okay, so now I'm going to go there. Okay, so you're saying right here, this is what you're thinking. And then, you know, here and then here. And I think doing it more, you know, bite size, I think what you're saying is money, because that's a way better approach. It's like, hey, let's not, and you've really taught me this. It's like, hey, like, just so software engineer is being a software engineer, you need to understand the problem as a whole. But when you're on a certain piece, and you've taught me this, it's like, stop trying to think about like, just like, does that code right there work? before you move on, before you go touch anything else, is what you're doing right here, right? You know, make sure that's right, then go do something else. Then go to the back end, right? Because what I would do a lot as a junior developer is like, okay, this isn't really working. In React, I'm just going to see if I can just figure it all out in C# now. You know, I'm going to go see if I can just put the object in the back end and do it there, you know, do all the business logic. And then you're just writing back code, you know, you're just writing back code at that point. And so, yeah, I love everything you say. You know, we can end out on this because when you're talking, it reminded me of a story from last summer. You know, I had one of my first big features on one of my projects where we were developing something from scratch. A lot of the early on code that I was writing was more maintenance for the project, but I was writing something completely new for the feature. And I remember, man, I was, you know, we were in the office one day and I'm almost like through, you know, I've got some data coming in. It's looking really good. And you came in, you were looking at it, you're like, oh yeah, man, this is really good. And you said, you know what you should do here? Oh, you know what? You should pass that in as a dictionary, you know? And you wrote out like what a dictionary is. And you got me all hyped on a dictionary because you're like, tell me about it. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it that way. Right. And so I start writing it out as a dictionary, realized I never touched a dictionary before, didn't really even know what it was, broke the whole thing. And, you know, now I'm like going down this other path, you know, this dictionary. And, you know, we ended up meeting a couple more times because I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I didn't get it, you know, like, can you know, but you were so great about that then, like, okay, why don't you write this out, you know, kind of in a dictionary? Why don't you look that up and write that out in React. And then once you kind of have that done, now, you know, we'll go to the back end. I'll teach you kind of how to get that back out of the database, how to pass that back. Right. And it ended up being something really good for me because I learned something new and it was the best code for that specific block. But, you know, you were just talking about that fire hose. I just remember you and I having that conversation and like you leaving the office. And I was so amped on that direction. I was like, I don't know what he said, but it sounded really cool. So I'm just going to do it. You know, you just dive right in. But, you know, that's also some of the fun sometimes of being a software engineer. You know, you get to solve problems. And if you like solving problems, I like solving problems. And it's fun sometimes, you know?
Yeah. Well, so I'll finish off by saying, just circling back, the most important thing is communication.
Yeah. 100%.
And, you know, just one final point on that is that as a junior developer, you need to be in a state of humility to where, and you have to have a little bit of a thick skin, like regardless of whether or not the person you're talking to, the senior developer, intends to do this, sometimes it might come off like they're saying that you just don't know what you're doing. Yeah. And if you get upset about that, and that is going to block your own personal growth. Right. And so you just have to have this humility and just giving people the benefit of the doubt. And I'll just take it even a step further. Even if the senior developer is intentionally calling you out for not knowing anything, like, you just have to let it go and try and learn as best you can, you know, and then from the senior side, you got to have empathy. Yeah. Just like you were saying earlier, like you've been through this stage, you know, you kind of need to pay attention to how you're coming off. You know, maybe this is something that you've dealt with a ton. You're really familiar to you, but surely you can remember a time when there was something that wasn't familiar. Right. And but it's really both sides. And what, as a senior developer, what you can't do is get frustrated, even if the junior developer you're talking to is being intentionally obtuse. Yeah. And like, you just have to maintain that empathy and say, hey, I know what it's like to be learning. I'm going to try to maintain respect and try and pay attention to how I'm wording things, and pay attention to try and, you know, like I said earlier, I don't think that we should coddle people, but you should try to use a little bit of tact. 100%. And so but it's both sides.
Well, it's respect.
Yeah, it is. It is respect. And just keeping the respect key forefront of your mind, having humility, and also having empathy in your communications. It's just going to make your professional life so much better. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say 90% of the people that you talk to are just trying to do their job. They want to help you. You know, there are some people out there that aren't as nice and, you know, are interested in game playing and all of that stuff. But I at least in my career, most people are trying to solve a problem.
100%.
And if you're taking things personally or getting frustrated, then you're missing out on an opportunity to either be a mentor or to learn something. So that's what I would end with.
I love it. I love it 100%. Yeah, I'll you know, ending out, I'd co-sign on everything you said, and I'll give one more just small life hack that you reminded me of. If you're a junior developer, here's something that I learned how to do: is you want to grow, put the time in, put the work in. And what that's meant for me is sometimes what I'll do is I will actually go in. Ken and I aren't even in a project right now together, but I will still go in on our work GitHub sometimes, and I will just see what he's doing, and I'll just try to figure out what exactly you're doing and just try to understand it. And, you know, sometimes it's kind of weird because I'll catch my coworkers off guard, but literally the other week, I was just looking at one of our coworkers' code, and I was like, I've never seen somebody do this one particular thing in React before. I just went up and asked him. I was like, hey, you wrote this. Can you tell, like, you know, and it caught him off guard for a second. He's like, why are you, you know, why are you even, like, where is this coming from? I'm like, you know, I like to just see what you guys are doing and learn. And I saw you do this. I don't understand it. Can you help me understand this code? Because I think it's actually really good. Yeah, you know what? You're a junior developer. You want to get on the good side of your senior developers, build a relationship, pay attention to what they're doing. And honestly, you want to learn from them. Don't just learn from them when you have a problem. Go see what they're doing. Go try to read their code. You know, at the end of the day, if the real, you know, senior level engineers, most of the time, they're pushing every day. Go look at what they're doing in GitHub and just read it and figure out if you can understand it. Right. And so sometimes it takes like 2 hours, but I'll literally just sit there. You know, you did some things for, you know, some imaging for a project that was really good for a client. I just sat there for like 2 hours once and was like, let me just read this and just try to figure out what he did, you know, and you'll grow that way. So a lot of different ways to grow, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the soft skills. Like we're constantly talking about. Man, we love you guys. Thank you guys so much for being with us on Dev Corner. We will be back in 2 weeks with another guest. We'll see you soon.
Bye.